welcome to the Loaded Goat. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're here to talk about the Andy Griffith Show.
We are.
We are.
That's the one thing that you and I have in common. Is I came on this thinking that I would talk about the Andy Griffith Show. You came on thinking that you'd really talk about the Andy Griffith Show. And that's what brings us together.
That is what brings us together. I was like, you almost looked at me like I thought you were going to say, we are. I mean, you know.
Do you remember what? I can't remember what episode it was where you said the name of it. And I was like, I don't think I watched that episode. We had to reschedule it, but I did not come prepared to watch what I thought we were talking about.
Yeah, because of our commitment to quality, we decided not to record on an episode that Christopher had not watched.
Little did you know, it was no different.
It was no different. I was like, you might as well have not watched the episode. It didn't really matter.
Yeah.
But today we're doing The Luck of Newton Monroe. I've watched this episode a few times. It is not one that I have watched frequently, and it's not one that's really in the Andy Griffith lexicon, but I was curious what you thought of it.
I thought it was good. It was solid. You know, new character that wasn't super annoying. I thought it gave, a lot of the gripes that I have toward the Fun Girls, right, is that they make Andy and Barney worse. Mm-hmm. I think that this is one of those episodes where you get to see Andy's good side, where he tries to help people and bring people along and build them up in a way that's productive. And so I liked that in this episode. You get to see the fatherhood rearing side of the man.
Yeah, and I think honestly, this is one where they.
Are we talking about the same episode?
We're. I'm sorry. No,
this is painting the porch.
I was going to say. I was like, Christopher, we're not doing Opie the Birdman today. I'm just kidding. No, I agree with you, and this is one where it's also kind of like, sometimes when they have a character that's well written with a memorable actor. I mean, obviously Don Rickles is one that you remember him as he got older. He was Mr. Insult. I mean, that was what he came on to be. But he's a very memorable character just in the way he comports himself throughout the
I didn't
whole
know this was
show.
Don Rickles.
Yeah, it's Don Rickles.
I looked him up recently because in the Mike Birbiglia new stand-up, he talks about how he doesn't want his daughter to be an insult comic. And I looked up who the insult comics were. First of all, I love insult comics, turns out. But Don Rickles as the
Don Rickles was kind of the pioneer of all of it. And there's a scene, he's in, I don't know if you've ever seen Casino with Robert De Niro.
No. Should I? I mean, I'm always looking for oldies.
I mean, have you seen Goodfellas?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not as good as Goodfellas, but it's kind of like the same kind of vibe of Goodfellas, but in a casino.
It's okay, fellas.
It's basically, it's okay, fellas. It's very memorable though.
I've been trying to. One of my favorite movies is Ocean's 11, mm-hmm. and I've been quoting one of the Brad Pitt lines quite regularly in the last 2 weeks. That's you gotta run before you can crawl.
Well, so Don Rickles is in Casino and he plays the pit boss, and there's an outtake of him just with Robert De Niro, and he's like just chat. He's Robert De Niro is doubled over laughing because Robert De Niro flubbed a line or something like that, and Don Rickles is just going off. He goes, "Oh yeah, with the world's greatest actor over here," and I mean, and everybody's just dying laughing.
That's funny.
Yeah. So you want to dive in?
I'm gonna go feet first, but you should dive in.
All right, I'll dive in. We open with Andy and Barney sitting on the front porch after church singing. Actually, let me first back up and note that this episode first aired on April 12th, 1965.
Okay. That's super helpful for me to know. Kind of contextualize where I was.
You know where you were, what you were doing. I mean, you were
April 12th, not doing... spring is starting to sprung.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting there. And so Barney and Andy are sitting on the front porch after church singing, and a fly buzzes by, and Barney catches it, but he lets it go because it's Sunday. And George Lindsay... I'm sorry?
Catcher and release. Can I do a plug? I got my dad for Christmas that salt shooter that shoots salt at bugs.
Yeah.
They're really fun.
Does it work?
Have you seen these? Yeah,
no.
Yeah, it really shoots out. Yeah, just put some table salt in and bam.
Well, that's great. That's great. I'm glad that's working out. I mean, George Lindsay, who plays Goober, said he thinks this is one of the great pieces of television history is this fly scene.
Oh,
I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I'd say that, but I do think it is very good in a subtle way.
I like it in the context of the last episode with the Fun Girls, where they also let somebody else go because they're not going 60, they're going 40, and I think they say at the end too, it's a Sunday or something
Did
like
they
that.
say it's a Sunday? Yeah.
I mean, probably not, but maybe they did.
Let's just say they did.
Yeah,
Nobody will notice. Know
yeah.
the difference. People haven't
Fly
watched
around and
these
find out.
episodes. People haven't watched these episodes multiple times.
Yeah.
So tomorrow's Thelma Lou's birthday, but Barney hasn't gotten her a present yet. And a throwback to a man in a hurry. He says he's going to go to the filling station, get a bottle of pop, go home, take a nap, and then go over to Thelma Lou's to watch a little TV. And he repeats it a few times, but this time he actually does it. And at the filling station, Barney finds Goober listening to a transistor radio, and he bought it from a man who is now selling a watch to Floyd. And we learn the man's name is Monroe, and he is played, as we mentioned, by Don Rickles. And Barney points out that the watch
I like
is kind of
pause like that because you're like, are you ever going to say anything? And I don't have anything. Keep rolling, Aaron.
Thanks for nothing. And Barney
I'm learning so much.
Barney points out that the watch is kind of big, and the man chastises him. And then which is just funny. This is like Don Rickles just going on about him. I'm like, you're kind of a nutty salesman, but I mean, he's just kind of a character in himself.
I get this. He's defending the thing that he just sold.
Yeah, no, I get it, but it is just like, hey, he wants your approval. Hey, what kind of talk is that? And then immediately flips it over to, hey, you want to buy anything yourself? And he asks about a present for Thelma Lou. And Newton Monroe offers a ring, but Barney says he doesn't want her to get the wrong idea.
Which I get. Yeah.
So he offers a fox fur instead. And it's only $13.25. And apparently that's a good deal. And apparently it retails for $50 or higher in most stores.
I didn't know fox fur was really a thing.
I mean, I've seen if you
fox fur?
No, I don't wear a fox fur, and I wouldn't. If I bought I wouldn't just buy a pelt and it like that with a head on it. I mean, that was a thing that I thought was a little strange.
Yeah, that's fair. You at least want the tail.
Yeah, I mean, it does have the tail. I'd rather not have the head. Although I have been to flea markets, and if you go to certain markets, you will just see a full pelt like that.
What goes on at a flea market?
You never been to a flea market?
This is a Seinfeld thing. George thinks that there are actually fleas at a flea market.
Yeah, there's no flea. I mean, I guess some flea markets have fleas, but that's not the idea.
Probably flea markets that sell full fox furs, I would venture to say, have fleas.
They may have fleas. The problem with a good flea market is you're really seeing people who are bringing unique kind of things like antiques and all kinds of just stuff that you can't really necessarily find anywhere, at least before the days of eBay. And, crafts and goods and all kinds of things. And they're setting up shop and you're just seeing what they have. But a lot of flea markets just turn into almost junk fests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like people bringing what they pulled out of like people that bought like tube socks in bulk and are trying to sell that in a bunch of, just stuff. And it's just, you just go, or it's just trinkets and all kind of, it's just, it can be poorly done, but but there are some really good flea markets out there. I will tell you if you're ever in Murphy, North Carolina, they have a very good antique flea market.
I've heard that.
Have you?
I read that in the Charlotte News Observer.
You almost had me convinced there for a second.
Thank you.
Yeah. So back at the Taylor household, Barney is talking about how much Thelma Lou loved the fur. And when he tells Andy how much it was, Andy is of course stunned, and he thinks the man is selling stolen goods. And Barney says, no, there's no way that would be happening. He's an experienced lawman, and he would have spotted that in a heartbeat.
As Barney has never been wrong once before.
Never. So at the jail, Goober and Floyd are saying how the things they bought don't work, and Thelma Lou calls and is crying because the fur is starting to fall out of the pelt that he bought her.
Oof. It's like the Russian hat. I got all sorts of Seinfeld references today.
Oh,
the sable hat.
The sable hat, yeah.
Rat hair.
Oh. Yeah, that is I think when I think about that episode, I think Kramer screaming, Kenny, as he's like sitting at his bed as the Kenny Rogers light shuts off. I think that may be my favorite part of the whole movie, or the guy who blows off the meeting and he gets fired. I mean, I don't know. That's a great episode.
It is. You're very good at stringing together. I can't quite do that. That the Costanza, the leave behind being the Kenny Rogers, and then the person skipping the meeting. I would have a hard time linking up the different storylines. It's very impressive. That beautiful mind of yours. Russell Crowe right here.
It's what's more important is having a beautiful heart.
Oh, okay. Well, keep working.
Thank you. I'll do my best. So Floyd says the man is still in town selling goods, and Andy says they'll take care of it. And Barney says he thinks those goods may be stolen as we go to commercial. This episode was produced by Pod Machine. They do a great podcast at a great rate. I was fortunate to get started on this a few years ago, and I've just been very, very pleased with it ever since. I mean, they will edit your podcast. They will do artwork for your podcast. They'll do the YouTube videos for the podcast, and they have a very quick turnaround time once you upload all your material. So I highly recommend it.
I'm pro pod in general. I love bean pods. I like pod hotels. I like pod apples, maybe. But you know what pods I like best? Pod machines.
Pod machines. Me too.
I like them better than podcasts. I honestly don't even really like podcasts that much. So I'm just thankful that you're here.
Why do you do this podcast?
To see your dimples, baby.
To see my dimples. Well, and if you really push hard, my Pod Machine might be able to give you some dimples. I don't know. So go to podmachine.com to learn more and enter Loaded Goat at checkout for a 10% discount.
And that's spelled just like Loaded Goat.
And after the break, they approach Newton Monroe, and Barney calls him a thief, and they get into it. I mean, they're just trading barbs back and forth.
They are. Do you believe, he talks about good thing his mom isn't there to see him. His mom's 52. I struggle. And then they made a comment a little bit later in the episode that he may look like he's in his 40s, but he's in his low 30s. I think he looks like he's mid 50s. My goodness.
I mean, I think that's just the unfortunate thing about going bald.
All right.
I mean, the man can't help it that he looks a little older because he's balding. But his mother being in her early 50s and him being in his early 30s, I mean, we're talking what? She would have had him in the 30s. She would have had him in the 30s. I mean, women weren't waiting until they were in their late 20s or early 30s and established in their careers for the most part.
That I believe. I just looking at him and thinking, no, there's no way. You and your mom.
He's
having a little Marty McFly moment with his mom at the dance, where they're the same age.
No, he's in his. I think Don Rickles is in his early 30s, considering the fact that he just died not too long ago.
He did.
Yeah, he did. And it's like what was it? Michael Chiklis.
Go ahead.
Michael Chiklis on The Shield. I mean, he was, he shaved his head, but before that, and he was playing like, tough, corrupt cop Vic Mackey. But before that, he was playing this commish, like a police commissioner, when he was in his late 20s because he was balding. And so everybody just assumed, oh, yeah, he must be a guy in his 40s.
Just works that way.
Yeah.
It's too bad. Otherwise, listeners, we would have absolutely had Don Rickles on this episode to talk about his experience recording it. So it's gone too soon.
Well, he has gone too soon. I mean, it's a shame. I don't know if we could have gotten Don Rickles. I'll be honest with you. We haven't really had any success getting actors for this show, with the exception of Rudel Lee.
Did I say this on the show? I was in Palm Springs and looked down, and there was a star that had Rudel Lee's name on it.
You sent me a photo of it.
I don't know if I mentioned it on the show, but I was so excited. I didn't recognize anybody's name, and I was like, "Oh yeah, there she is."
There's Rudel Lee. Yeah, no, I mean, it was nice to have her on the show. I mean, I think we run into two challenges. One, you haven't done your part and reached out to anybody. And a lot of these folks are already passing away.
I reached out to some. I reached out to a lot of folks connected to the Catholic Church to see if they'd be interested in coming to talk about Andy Griffith Show. A lot of high-level Vatican officials. Every single cardinal has received a request. But yeah, they haven't gotten back to me. I haven't seen the smoke. So
I didn't realize that was part of our planning. I said, can you reach out to people who would have something to say about the show? And you're like, you know what I'm gonna go troll priests.
Straight to the top.
Straight to the top. All right. Well, helpful as always. And they so Andy asks for a bill of sale. Newton provides one. So it clearly bought the stuff. It just is crap. And Andy tells him to move on because he doesn't have a peddler's license and he's selling junk. And then later Barney brings him in for selling. And Andy says he's going to have to arrest him now because he's peddling without a license. And this is where we learn that Newton Monroe is kind of a sad sack who lives out of his car and says he's at 34, but he looks 44. And Christopher's like, no, you look like you're 54.
You're 54. And he should have considered drug dealing. That would have been the correct career choice, I think, for him.
You think Newton Monroe would be a good drug dealer?
Yeah, the product moves itself. It's minimal conversation with people.
I think there would be a variation of the line of Saul Goodman going, "It's time for some tough love here. You two suck at peddling meth, period." I think that would have...
What if the Andy Griffith Show had, we've talked before about that really serious episode of Home Improvement where Brad gets caught smoking dope. Like, what if the Andy Griffith Show had one where there was like, we have a heroin dealer on the street
tonight on a very special Andy Griffith Show.
We encourage you watch this with your kids.
With your kids, yeah.
I don't know. The Sackler family.
I mean, I don't know. Or, where we have, obviously, or a variation of, "I'm so excited." And, and Opie goes, "I'm just so scared." I mean, or something like that. I don't know. I think it would have been a major outlier, I think, on the show.
Yeah, it would have been a game changer for it.
Yeah. But so Barney decides to put him to work, and he's digging a tree. And Andy tells him to watch out for pipes, and guess what happens next?
He hits a pipe.
He hits a pipe. Lean in.
He hits
closer.
A pipe.
Yeah.
You gotta call before you dig. I think it's 311.
311.
I think that's the number to call to see if what's underneath before you dig. At least in
I don't
Montana.
know. Okay, well, good to know. I don't really do a lot of digging that deep. Do you have to call? Do you dig much?
No, but they advertise this stuff all the time.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering, like, if you, it's like, what was that episode of Yellowstone where the guy finds a dinosaur bone? Like, he goes digging and he finds a dinosaur out in his backyard.
Yeah, you got to leave it.
Oh, you got to leave
Jack
it?
Horner.
Oh, the guy from Montana State?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He went to the University of Montana, for the record.
Oh, he did?
But then he taught at MSU. But he's a
Grizzly. All I know is I went to the Museum of the Rockies at Montana State University, and I just looked around. I was like, why would anybody go to the University of Montana?
Yeah. We can get into this at a later point.
Well, it reminds me of a time when I was in New Orleans at Mardi Gras, and there was this kid he was standing in front of me in a store, and he said, "We're just two guys from Brentwood, Tennessee." And Brentwood, Tennessee is a highfalutin, it's a very affluent town. Okay. And I said to the kid, who's probably 22, I said, "Oh, I went to MTSU." And he turned around and looked at me and put his hand gently on my arm and said, "Oh, good for you, sir. That's a good school. It's up and coming." And
you did the best you could with what you were given, didn't you?
I mean, and I was kind of like, I almost want to haul off and slap that kid, but I just let it go. But I was kind of like, I was like, oh my God. I was like, how rude.
Yeah, that's funny. I like that. Good for that kid.
Well, good for that kid. I don't think don't go you don't go doing that kind of stuff to people. So Barney is still putting him through on other jobs, and he's on the phone with Thelma Lou. Says he got her a new present. It's a $2 pineapple skinner that he bought from Newton. I tell you, I don't, as I've often said, why a woman would want to date Barney Fife just makes no sense to me. Yeah,
it'll become clear on the next episode.
Yeah,
the next episode, always just an episode away.
Always an episode away. I've got some bad news for you. The next episode is the last one in where Barney Fife's a regular character.
Oh, really? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted you to be prepared emotionally.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I'm prepared.
Okay. All right. So he's now got Newton cleaning the furnace. It turns out he also broke a radio. And this time he lights the furnace with the flue closed, and smoke and soot goes everywhere. And then next we have Barney having him mopping, and he breaks a shelf window, and Barney screams that he's inept and storms off. And a dejected Newton goes to sit in his cell and says he's a born loser. And so Andy's like, I'm going to try to help his confidence out. He gives him a job painting his porch, and Newton comes back and says he's not sure he did a good job, and says the paint was too thick. And when he put the thinner in, it turned to water. And they go to check, and even in black and white, it looks
terrible.
I'm like, what did you do?
Yeah, can't recover.
How did this happen? And so Andy and Barney paint it, and Newton comes back and sees that he is under the impression he did a great job, and he is proud of himself. And Andy then tells Newton that he's going to suspend his sentence. That's probably better for everyone. And later that day, Barney and Andy pull up to the jail, and Newton has told them that he's learned that he's not inept. He's ept, and he's going to become a painter and paint the courthouse for free. He then has the goofiest smile on his face as he takes some paint and slathers it over the Justice of the Peace sign.
It's very Jackson Pollock.
Yeah. That's I think Jackson Pollock would even be like, hey,
I tried.
Hey, I have a purpose here. You're just slapping paint on here.
Yeah.
So in the epilogue, it turns out they got Newton a job in a retail store, and he has sent Barney a pencil sharpener and Andy an electric razor. And Barney tries to run the razor to his face, and his face gets caught as we close the show.
I used to use I found an old razor of my grandfather's from like the 60s, and I used it, and it wouldn't catch the skin, but every so often it would it wouldn't have the power to cut a hair, but it would just like pull the hair slowly out of my face.
That sounds unpleasant. Yeah.
I think it was an Abercrombie and Fitch, actually, like when it was an old company.
Well, that's I'm sorry you had that experience.
Yeah, me too. But thank you for listening.
How many whistles would you give this?
I'm gonna give this one 6.
I'll go 7.
7? I was debating 7. I'm like a rising 6.
Yeah. Things you liked. What things did you not like about it?
I'm just no Opie. There wasn't a lot that actually made me laugh out loud.
Yeah.
I liked the Floyd parts. I thought the Barney scene yelling was fun. You could have used more like Thelma Lou actively as a character here, maybe, if I were to improve. That could bring it up to an 8.
I think you're right. I think having Thelma Lou in there would be great. I was really like more Aunt B.
No, yeah, good.
And I know the militant Aunt B fans are probably hate this episode.
Mm-hmm, probably boycott it.
Any final thoughts?
No, sir. It's been really good to see you today.
It's been really good to see you too. We appreciate everybody for listening. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. And if you think about it, subscribe. Next week, we're going to say goodbye to Don Knotts and review Opie Flunk's Arithmetic. Until then, Barney. Christopher. Bye, Barney.
Bye.
Until then, Christopher, you're not inept.
No, it's a Sunday.